In 1469, a young Florentine nobleman married for love. His family objected. His advisors counseled against it. The political implications were disastrous. Within 3 years, his emotional decision had cost him his fortune, his position, and eventually his life. Niccolò Machiavelli documented this case, and dozens like it, arriving at a conclusion that modern society finds deeply offensive. Marrying for love is one of the most strategically catastrophic decisions a person can make. This isn't the cynical observation of a bitter man. Machiavelli married himself and documented his own struggles with the gap between romantic feeling and practical reality. What he understood, and what 5 centuries of romantic ideology have obscured, is that marriage is fundamentally a strategic alliance with massive legal, financial, and social implications. Treating it primarily as an expression of romantic love is like buying a house because you like the color of the front door while ignoring the foundation, the neighborhood, the title issues, and whether you can afford the mortgage. Today, we're exploring what Machiavelli actually observed about marriage as a strategic institution versus marriage as a romantic ideal. We're examining why the historical approach to marriage as alliance rather than love story produced more stable, more prosperous, and often more satisfying unions than our modern romance first model. And we're revealing why your decision to marry for love might be the most expensive mistake you ever make. Not just financially, but emotionally and practically as well. This isn't about eliminating love from marriage. It's about understanding that love is a terrible primary criterion for choosing a life partner, and that the marriages that last and prosper are those built on strategic compatibility with love as a beneficial side effect rather than the foundation. Because when you build on feelings that change, everything built on that foundation becomes unstable. When you build on aligned interests and compatible life strategies, feelings can fluctuate without destroying what you've built together. Machiavelli watched princes choose brides for love and lose kingdoms. He watched merchants marry for passion and destroy family businesses. He watched alliance marriages based on strategic interest survive for decades, while love marriages collapsed within years. The pattern was so consistent, so undeniable, that he concluded what every previous generation understood, but modern romantics refuse to accept: that marriage is far too important a decision to be made primarily on the basis of temporary emotional states. The historical reality of strategic marriage. Before we examine why love-based marriage is strategically foolish, we need to understand what marriage actually was for most of human history. Not the sanitized version you see in period dramas, but the actual function that marriage served in societies that understood its true purpose. Marriage was fundamentally an alliance between families, an economic arrangement with legal implications, a social contract that created obligations and benefits for extended networks beyond just the 2 individuals involved. The couple's personal feelings for each other were considered pleasant if present, but essentially irrelevant to the marriage's core function. A merchant married his daughter to the son of a trading partner, not because the young people were in love, but because the marriage created business advantages for both families, secured trade routes, combined capital, and ensured loyalty through familial obligation. If the couple happened to develop affection over time, excellent. If not, the marriage still served its purpose. A nobleman married to secure political alliances, to combine estates, to create military partnerships, or to access the wealth or connections of the bride's family. The marriage was negotiated by people who understood its strategic implications rather than by young people whose judgment was clouded by attraction and romantic feeling. A craftsman married to secure a business partnership, to access his father-in-law's workshop or clientele, to ensure someone would maintain the household while he worked, to produce heirs who would continue the family trade. The marriage was an economic decision made with the same care and strategic thinking as any other major business investment. This wasn't cruelty or oppression, though modern people interpret it that way through our romantic ideological lens. It was practical wisdom developed over centuries of observing what actually made marriages succeed or fail. And what consistently made marriages succeed was alignment of practical interests, compatible life goals, and family support. What consistently made marriages fail was intense romantic passion that burned out quickly, leaving nothing substantial to sustain the relationship once feelings faded. Machiavelli observed that strategic marriages often developed genuine affection over time as couples worked together toward shared goals, raised children, built wealth, and created lives of mutual benefit. The affection that developed from partnership, from overcoming challenges together, from building something meaningful together, proved far more durable than the passionate love that characterized romance-based marriages. Meanwhile, love matches frequently deteriorated into resentment as the intense feelings that justified the marriage faded, revealing fundamental incompatibilities in values, goals, life approaches, and practical matters. The couple who married because they couldn't imagine life without each other often found themselves a few years later unable to imagine continuing life together, trapped in a legal and social arrangement that no longer had any foundation once the feelings changed. The historical approach wasn't perfect. It sometimes created miserable matches, particularly when families were more concerned with their own interests than their children's well-being. But it had several advantages over our modern romance-first model that we need to examine honestly. First, expectations were realistic. No one entered strategic marriages expecting perpetual, passionate love. They expected partnership, cooperation, and mutual benefit. When those materialized, the marriage succeeded. When romantic feelings also developed, that was bonus. This realistic framework created far less disappointment than modern marriages, where people expect eternal romantic passion and feel betrayed when normal human psychology produces the inevitable cooling of intense romantic feeling. Second, support systems were stronger. When two families allied through marriage, both families had investment in making the marriage work. Problems were addressed with the resources of extended networks rather than just the couple trying to figure everything out alone. Financial troubles, conflicts, child-rearing challenges all benefited from family involvement rather than being solely the couple's burden. Third, the criteria for matching were more comprehensive. Rather than just, do we have intense feelings for each other right now? The evaluation included financial compatibility, aligned life goals, complementary skills and temperaments, family stability and reputation, shared values about major life questions, and practical considerations about how the couple would actually build a life together. These criteria proved far more predictive of marital success than romantic feeling ever has. Fourth, and this is crucial, the marriages had purpose beyond the relationship itself. The couple wasn't trying to meet all each other's needs, to be everything to each other, to find completion in each other. They were partners in a larger project of building family wealth, raising successful children, maintaining social position, advancing family interests. The marriage served purposes beyond just making each other happy, which, paradoxically, often made both parties more satisfied than modern marriages, where happiness is the sole goal. Machiavelli recognized all of this not because he was unromantic, but because he was observational rather than ideological. He documented what actually worked rather than what people wished would work. And what actually worked was treating marriage as the strategic alliance it fundamentally is, rather than as primarily a romantic arrangement. Why love is the wrong foundation. Now let's examine specifically why marrying primarily for love is strategically disastrous. This requires confronting some deeply uncomfortable truths about the nature of romantic love that our culture systematically denies. Romantic love is temporary, not sometimes temporary, not usually temporary, not temporary, unless you work really hard at maintaining it. Always temporary. The intense, passionate feeling that characterizes falling in love is a neurochemical state that the human brain cannot maintain long-term. It's physiologically impossible. Studies show this state typically lasts between 6 months and 3 years, with 18 months being the average. What you experience as falling in love is a cocktail of dopamine, norepinephrine, and decreased serotonin that creates a temporary state of obsession, euphoria, and reduced judgment. This state exists to get you to bond and reproduce. It's not designed to last because maintaining it would be metabolically expensive and would impair your ability to function in other necessary areas of life. Your brain literally cannot sustain that state long-term without burning out. So, when you marry for love, what you're actually doing is making a permanent legal and financial commitment based on a temporary neurochemical state. You're betting your future on feelings that will definitely, inevitably, biochemically change. This is like signing a 30-year mortgage on a house because you like how it looks at sunset on one particular evening, without considering whether the house actually meets your practical needs. When the romantic love fades, as it inevitably does, one of 3 things happens. Either the couple has built enough practical compatibility and partnership that the relationship continues on a different foundation, or they try desperately to recreate the fading feelings through affairs, divorce and remarriage, or constant relationship work, trying to revive something that's neurologically impossible to sustain, or they simply endure a dead relationship because the legal and practical costs of divorce are too high. The first outcome can happen, but it's essentially luck, whether 2 people who chose each other primarily for romantic chemistry happen to also be compatible partners once that chemistry normalizes. You weren't evaluating for compatibility, you were evaluating for feeling. The second and third outcomes are far more common because the couple never built anything substantial beneath the romantic feeling to sustain them when it changed. But it gets worse. Romantic love actively impairs judgment. That neurochemical cocktail reduces activity in brain regions associated with critical thinking and negative evaluation. You literally cannot think clearly about your romantic partner during the falling in love phase. The very feelings that our culture says should determine whether you marry are feelings that impair your ability to evaluate whether you should marry this particular person. This is why people who are madly in love ignore obvious red flags, why they dismiss concerns from friends and family, why they overlook fundamental incompatibilities, why they enter marriages with people whose values, goals, lifestyle preferences, and life approaches are completely incompatible with their own. The romantic feeling makes these incompatibilities feel irrelevant or surmountable through love. Then, when the feeling fades and judgment returns, all those incompatibilities remain, but now you're legally bound to someone you wouldn't have chosen if you'd been thinking clearly. Machiavelli observed this pattern repeatedly. The passionate courtship that led to hasty marriage, the couple who were madly in love but completely unsuited for actual life partnership, the relationship that felt like destiny but crumbled within years under the weight of practical incompatibilities. The pattern was so consistent that he concluded what should be obvious. You cannot trust your judgment about major life decisions while under the influence of intense romantic feeling. Consider what happens in love-based marriages when the feeling fades. Many people interpret the fading of romantic love as a sign that they chose wrong, that their partner isn't their true love, that the relationship is dead. They divorce and pursue the feeling again with someone new, starting a cycle that most people repeat 2 or 3 times before either giving up or finally accepting that the feeling always fades, and finding it again with someone new just restarts the same cycle. This interpretation is wrong. The fading of romantic love isn't a sign of choosing wrong. It's a sign of normal human neurology. But when you built your entire marriage on that feeling, you have nothing else to sustain the relationship when it normalizes. You haven't built partnership, aligned interests, compatible life approaches, or shared larger purposes. You just have two people who once felt intensely about each other and now don't, with no other reason to stay together. Strategic marriages avoid this trap entirely by never depending on romantic feeling in the first place. When two people marry because they're compatible life partners with aligned goals and interests, the relationship doesn't fall apart when intense romantic feeling fades, because the relationship was never built on that feeling. If romantic love develops over time, excellent. If not, the marriage still functions well because it's serving its actual purposes of partnership, family building, and mutual advancement. This is why arranged marriages, when done thoughtfully with input from the individuals being married, often report higher long-term satisfaction than love marriages. Not because the couples love each other more, but because they never expected intense romantic passion and thus aren't disappointed when they experience normal human partnership instead. They evaluate the marriage on whether it's accomplishing its purposes, financial security, successful child-rearing, mutually beneficial partnership, rather than on whether they feel intensely in love. The brutal truth is that love is a terrible criterion for choosing a life partner, because love is a temporary state that impairs judgment about the very question it's being used to answer. You wouldn't make any other major life decision while experiencing impaired judgment from a temporary neurochemical state, but that's exactly what marrying for love requires. The financial catastrophe of love marriages. Now let's examine the concrete costs of marrying for love rather than strategic compatibility. These aren't abstract philosophical points. These are real, measurable financial disasters that affect millions of people who made romantic decisions without considering practical implications. When you marry for love, financial compatibility is usually an afterthought if it's considered at all. You're in love. Money seems trivial compared to your feelings. You'll figure it out. Love conquers all. This attitude creates predictable financial disasters. Different approaches to money are among the top causes of marital conflict and divorce. One partner is a saver, the other a spender. One is risk-averse, the other takes financial gambles. One values financial security above all, the other values experiences and doesn't worry about saving. These incompatibilities don't matter much while you're dating and your finances are separate. They become catastrophic in marriage when your finances are legally joined. The spender can destroy the saver's carefully built financial security. The risk-taker can gamble away joint assets. The person who values experiences can prevent the security-focused partner from ever achieving the financial stability they need to feel safe. All of this breeds resentment that destroys whatever romantic feeling brought you together. Strategic marriages evaluated financial compatibility carefully before commitment. Does this person have similar financial goals? Do we agree on how to earn, save, spend, and invest? Are our lifestyles compatible in terms of cost? Do we have similar attitudes toward risk, debt, and financial planning? These questions prevented marriages between people whose financial incompatibility would inevitably create conflict. But financial disaster from love marriages goes deeper than just incompatible approaches to money. Consider career implications. When you marry for love without considering practical compatibility, you often marry someone whose career goals conflict with your own. One partner gets a job opportunity across the country. The other has a career that requires staying local. Who sacrifices? The romantic ideal says love finds a way. The practical reality is that someone's career gets destroyed, breeding resentment that poisons the relationship. This scenario plays out millions of times with couples who married for love without considering whether their career paths were compatible. Strategic marriages considered this. If both families were merchants in the same city, no conflict. If both partners intended to practice crafts that could be done anywhere, no conflict. The career implications of the marriage were evaluated and planned for, rather than treated as problems to solve later with love and compromise. Or consider the financial implications of divorce, which happens to roughly half of love marriages. The person who married for love typically didn't prenuptial agreement because requesting one seemed unromantic, like planning for failure. So when the divorce happens, the financial devastation is complete. Assets built before marriage get divided. Retirement accounts get split. The family home gets sold. One or both parties pay enormous legal fees. Someone pays alimony. Someone pays child support. The financial damage from one divorce can set you back a decade or more in wealth building. And if you repeat the pattern by marrying for love again without learning the lesson, you can cycle through multiple divorces that destroy any possibility of building lasting wealth. Strategic marriages, because they were based on aligned practical interests rather than just romantic feeling, were far less likely to end in divorce. When they did, prenuptial arrangements were standard because the marriage was understood as a business arrangement from the start. The financial damage, while still significant, was contained through prior planning. Then there's the hidden financial cost of emotional decision-making in love marriages. When you married for love rather than practical compatibility, you make ongoing financial decisions based on emotion rather than strategy. You buy the bigger house because your spouse wants it, even though you can't afford it. You take on debt to maintain a lifestyle that matches your spouse's expectations, even though it's destroying your financial security. You make career choices based on what your spouse wants rather than what's strategically optimal. Each emotional decision has a financial cost. Compound these costs over decades, and the total damage is staggering. The couple who married strategically, with aligned financial values and goals, doesn't face these conflicts. They make financial decisions based on their shared understanding of priorities, rather than having to negotiate between incompatible emotional needs. Consider the generational wealth implications. Strategic marriages, combined family assets, creating greater wealth for the next generation. Love marriages often combine incompatible approaches to wealth that result in less wealth being built and passed on. The merchant who married his daughter to his business partner's son created a stronger business that generated more wealth for their children. The merchant whose daughter married for love to someone outside the business often saw family wealth diluted or lost entirely. In modern terms, this plays out as children from strategic marriages inheriting combined family wealth and business interests, while children from love marriages often inherit divorced parents' separately diminished assets and no unified family wealth strategy. Machiavelli observed that the princes who married for love typically died poorer than they started, while princes who married strategically often multiplied their wealth substantially. The pattern holds today. The person who marries strategic compatibility with aligned financial values and goals has far better financial outcomes over their lifetime than the person who marries for love and tries to figure out money later. The financial catastrophe isn't just about money itself. It's about how financial stress destroys relationships. The couple struggling with money because they married for love without considering financial compatibility doesn't have resources to address other marital problems. Financial stress causes conflicts that might not exist otherwise. It limits options for addressing relationship problems. It creates pressure that accelerates the dissolution of whatever romantic feeling brought the couple together. Meanwhile, the strategically matched couple, having avoided financial incompatibility by evaluating it before marriage, has financial stability that provides resources to address other challenges. They can afford counseling, separate spaces when needed, life improvements that reduce stress. Financial security doesn't guarantee marital happiness, but financial stress almost guarantees marital misery. The compatibility trap. Beyond financial disaster, marrying for love creates what Machiavelli would recognize as strategic incompatibility that manifests in countless daily conflicts. When you choose a partner primarily based on romantic feeling rather than practical compatibility, you're gambling that the person who makes you feel intensely will also happen to be compatible with you in the dozens of ways that actually matter for successful partnership. Sometimes this gamble pays off. Most often, it doesn't. And discovering incompatibility after you're legally bound creates a special kind of misery that could have been avoided through better selection criteria. Consider lifestyle compatibility. One partner is naturally orderly, the other lives in chaos. One wants a quiet home environment, the other needs social stimulation. One rises early and goes to bed early. The other is naturally nocturnal. One exercises regularly and eats healthily. The other doesn't prioritize fitness or nutrition. One wants to travel extensively, the other prefers staying home. One values punctuality, the other operates on flexible time. None of these differences matter much while dating. They become sources of constant friction in marriage when you're sharing space and building a life together. The orderly person grows to resent the chaos. The quiet, preferring person feels overwhelmed by constant social activity. The early riser gets frustrated with the night owl. The fitness-oriented person feels held back by their partner's different approach. The travel lover feels trapped. The punctual person grows resentful of always waiting. Multiply these conflicts across years or decades, and what you get is two people who once felt intensely about each other, but now can barely stand each other's presence, not because either person is wrong or bad, but because they're fundamentally incompatible in ways that romantic love temporarily obscured. Strategic marriages evaluated lifestyle compatibility carefully. Similar daily routines, compatible energy levels, aligned preferences for social activity versus solitude, matching approaches to household management. These practical considerations seemed mundane compared to romantic passion, which is exactly why they proved more important for long-term satisfaction. Then there's value compatibility, which proves even more crucial than lifestyle compatibility. You married someone whose core values differ fundamentally from yours because you were in love, and values seemed less important than feelings. Then you have to make major life decisions together and discover you can't agree because you're working from incompatible value systems. One person values career achievement above all else. The other values work-life balance. Conflict is inevitable about how much time gets devoted to work versus family. One person values financial security and builds life around achieving it. The other values experiences and adventure and sees security seeking as limiting. Conflict is inevitable about major financial decisions. One person is religious and wants to raise children with strong religious identity. The other is secular and wants children to choose their own path. Conflict is inevitable about how to raise children. These value conflicts have no good resolution because there's no compromise position that respects both value systems. Someone has to sacrifice their core values, breeding resentment that destroys the relationship over time. Or the couple lives in constant conflict, arguing about the same fundamental differences repeatedly without resolution. Strategic marriages matched for value compatibility. Similar religious backgrounds, aligned priorities about career versus family, compatible approaches to raising children, shared understanding of what constitutes a good life. These matches weren't perfect, but they avoided the fundamental value conflicts that destroy love marriages. Communication style compatibility often gets overlooked entirely in love marriages, but proves crucial for long-term functioning. One partner is direct and values honest communication even when it's uncomfortable. The other is conflict avoidant and values harmony over honesty. This incompatibility creates a dynamic where one partner feels they can't get real communication and the other feels constantly under attack for honesty. Or one partner processes emotions internally and needs space when upset. The other processes externally and needs immediate discussion and resolution. This incompatibility creates a dance where one person is pursuing the other for resolution while the pursued person withdraws further, creating escalating conflict from what's actually just incompatible processing styles. These patterns can be worked around if both partners are aware and accommodating. But in love marriages, where compatibility wasn't evaluated before, commitment, couples often don't recognize these incompatibilities as style differences versus someone being wrong or difficult. The result is constant frustration and feeling misunderstood that erodes whatever affection brought them together. Social compatibility creates another set of conflicts in love marriages. One partner is highly extroverted and needs extensive social interaction. The other is introverted and finds socializing draining. The extrovert feels held back and isolated. The introvert feels pressured and exhausted. Neither is wrong, but they're incompatible. Or one partner comes from a close family culture with frequent family gatherings and high family involvement in personal life. The other comes from an independent family culture with infrequent contact and strong boundaries around privacy. The first partner feels rejected when the other doesn't want constant family involvement. The second feels invaded when family expectations increase. Again, neither is wrong, but they're incompatible. Strategic marriages matched for social compatibility, similar family cultures, compatible social needs, aligned expectations about family involvement. These considerations prevented marriages between people whose social needs would inevitably conflict. Intellectual compatibility often gets dismissed as elitist in discussions of love marriage, but practical reality shows it matters enormously for long-term satisfaction. When one partner is highly intellectual and wants to discuss ideas, politics, philosophy, and complex topics, while the other partner has no interest in these discussions, both partners end up unsatisfied. The intellectual partner feels starved for stimulating conversation. The less intellectual partner feels inadequate or bored. This doesn't mean both partners need identical education levels or intelligence. It means they need compatible intellectual needs and interests. Two people can have very different educational backgrounds but similar curiosity and interest in learning and discussing ideas, making them compatible. Or two people can have similar education but completely different intellectual needs, making them incompatible. Strategic marriages considered intellectual compatibility as one factor among many. Do these people enjoy talking to each other about substantive topics? Do they have compatible intellectual curiosity? Will they bore each other over time, or will they remain interesting to each other? Love marriages rarely consider this. Then couples wonder why they have nothing to talk about after a few years together. The cumulative effect of all these incompatibilities is what Machiavelli would recognize as the difference between a functional alliance and a doomed one. When you marry for love without evaluating practical compatibility across lifestyle, values, communication, social needs, and intellectual connection, you're almost certainly creating multiple areas of ongoing conflict. Some couples can manage this, most cannot. The constant friction over fundamental incompatibilities wears away whatever romantic feeling initially brought them together, leaving two people trapped in a legal arrangement that serves neither of them well. Strategic marriages weren't perfect matches on all dimensions, but they avoided the most obvious and predictable incompatibilities by evaluating them before commitment. This practical approach produced partnerships that functioned well even if they weren't romantic ideal, which proved far more valuable over decades than the romantic ideal that collapsed under the weight of daily incompatibility. The modern strategic approach. Having established why love is a terrible primary criterion for marriage and why strategic considerations should dominate, the question becomes, what does a modern strategic approach to marriage look like? We can't simply replicate historical arranged marriage, but we can apply the underlying principles to contemporary contexts. The modern strategic approach treats marriage as what it fundamentally is: a legal and economic partnership with social implications, where compatibility across multiple dimensions matters far more than romantic feeling for long-term success. This doesn't eliminate romance or love from marriage. It puts them in proper perspective as pleasant additions to a relationship rather than sufficient justification for commitment. Start with financial compatibility, which should be non-negotiable. Before considering marriage, you need clear alignment on fundamental financial questions. What are each person's financial goals? What's the timeline for major financial milestones like home ownership, financial independence, or retirement? What's each person's approach to earning, spending, saving, and investing? What's each person's attitude toward debt and financial risk? What standard of living does each person expect, and is that sustainable with projected income? These discussions should happen early, explicitly, and in detail. If you discover fundamental financial incompatibility, that's a relationship ender regardless of romantic feeling, because financial incompatibility will destroy whatever romantic feeling exists, but only after you've legally and financially entangled yourself with someone whose financial approach conflicts with yours. This seems mercenary to people who've been taught that love conquers all. It's actually protective of both parties. Better to discover financial incompatibility before legal commitment than after marriage, when addressing it requires divorce. And in practice, couples who can't discuss money openly and reach genuine alignment about financial approach are demonstrating communication and compatibility problems that extend beyond just finances. Next, evaluate life goal compatibility. Where does each person want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? What does each person consider a successful life? What's each person's approach to career versus family? What role does each person want children to play in their life, if at all? What's each person's vision for how you'll spend time, what you'll prioritize, and what kind of life you're building together? If these visions align closely, you have foundation for partnership. If they conflict significantly, you have incompatibility that will create ongoing conflict. One person wanting to build a business while the other wants secure employment creates conflict about risk and time allocation. One person wanting a large family while the other wants to remain childless creates fundamental incompatibility. One person wanting to live in a major city while the other wants rural property creates logistical impossibility. Again, these incompatibilities should end relationships before marriage, not after. The romantic ideal says love will find a way and compromise is possible. The strategic reality is that compromise on fundamental life goals leaves both parties unsatisfied and resentful. Better to find someone whose life goals already align with yours than to ask someone to fundamentally reshape their life vision to accommodate yours. Evaluate value compatibility thoroughly. What does each person believe about major questions like religion, politics, ethics, and life priorities? Not superficial agreement, but deep alignment about what matters and why. You don't need identical positions on everything, but you need compatible frameworks that allow for mutual respect and unified direction. The couple where one person's political beliefs are core to their identity and the other's political beliefs directly conflict creates unresolvable tension. The couple where one person's religious beliefs require certain lifestyle choices while the other person's beliefs prohibit those same choices creates impossible conflict. These aren't differences to compromise away. their incompatibilities to identify before legal commitment. Assess lifestyle compatibility practically. Spend extended time together in daily life circumstances, not just date night situations. Can you coexist comfortably in shared space? Do your daily rhythms conflict or complement? Do your approaches to household management, cleanliness, organization, and daily routines create friction or harmony? Do your social needs and family expectations align? Many love marriages skip this evaluation, moving from romantic dates to cohabitation or marriage without really testing whether they can function well in shared daily life. Then they discover incompatibilities that romantic feeling temporarily obscured. Strategic evaluation requires living together long enough to see how compatible you actually are in daily functioning, not just how you feel during romantic moments. Evaluate intellectual compatibility honestly. Do you enjoy talking to each other about substantive topics? Do you find each other interesting beyond just physical attraction? Can you maintain engaging conversation over time? Do you have compatible needs for intellectual stimulation and discussion? This isn't about both people needing to be intellectuals or having identical interests. It's about whether you can sustain interesting interaction over decades. Many couples discover after marriage that they have nothing interesting to discuss once the newness wears off, creating relationships where partners are essentially roommates who occasionally have sex rather than genuine companions. Test communication compatibility through how you handle conflicts. Can you discuss difficult topics and reach resolution? Do you fight fair, or does conflict become abusive or destructive? Can you maintain respect even during disagreement? Do your communication styles complement or conflict? Couples who can't communicate well about conflicts before marriage won't magically develop those skills after. The strategic approach requires demonstrating that you can handle difficult conversations and disagreements constructively before making legal commitment. If your conflicts become destructive or you can't reach resolution on important topics, that's disqualifying incompatibility regardless of romantic feeling. Only after establishing compatibility across all these dimensions should romantic feeling be considered as a final factor. If you've found someone who's financially compatible, whose life goals align with yours, whose values are compatible, whose lifestyle fits with yours, who's intellectually engaging, and with whom you communicate well, then romantic feeling becomes relevant. Do you also feel attracted to and affectionate toward this highly compatible partner? If yes, you've found someone worth marrying. If no, you've found someone worth having in your life as friend or colleague, but not as spouse. This ordering puts romantic feeling in its proper place as one factor among many, rather than the only factor that matters. The result of this strategic approach is marriage to someone who's actually compatible with you across the dimensions that determine whether partnership works, who happens to also be someone you feel attracted to and affectionate toward. This foundation survives the inevitable fading of intense romantic feeling because the relationship was never built primarily on that feeling. It was built on practical compatibility that continues to function regardless of whether you feel intensely in love at any given moment. This approach feels unromantic to people raised on love marriage ideology. It's actually far more romantic in the true sense because it creates foundation for lasting partnership rather than intense feeling that burns out quickly. The romance that develops from years of compatible partnership proves far more satisfying than the romance of falling in love, which is intense but temporary. The prenuptial necessity. One practical application of strategic marriage thinking that deserves specific focus is the absolute necessity of prenuptial agreements. This single decision separates people who understand marriage as a legal and financial arrangement from those who still think of it primarily as a romantic commitment. The romantic objection to prenuptial agreements is that planning for divorce demonstrates lack of faith in the relationship, that truly loving couples don't need prenuptial protection, that requesting a prenuptial agreement is essentially admitting you expect the marriage to fail. This objection reveals profound strategic naivete about what marriage actually is and what risks you take by entering it. Marriage is a legal contract with specific default terms about property division, spousal support, and financial obligations if the marriage ends. When you marry without a prenuptial agreement, you're accepting those default terms without negotiation. You wouldn't sign any other major contract without reading the terms and negotiating them to protect your interests. But that's exactly what marrying without a prenuptial agreement requires. The default terms vary by jurisdiction, but generally involve dividing marital property regardless of who earned it, potential ongoing financial obligations to support your ex-spouse indefinitely, division of retirement accounts and other assets built during marriage, and no protection for assets you brought into the marriage. These terms might be reasonable, or they might be catastrophic, depending on your specific circumstances, but you're accepting them without negotiation by marrying without a prenuptial agreement. Machiavelli would recognize immediately that accepting terms without negotiation, when you have the opportunity to negotiate, is strategic incompetence. When you have the leverage to set terms, you set them. You don't just accept whatever default arrangement exists and hope for the best. The leverage point is before marriage, when your partner wants to marry you and is willing to negotiate terms to make that happen. After marriage, you have no leverage. Your partner gets divorced and accepts the default terms, or they don't get divorced. They have no incentive to agree to anything more favorable to you than what the default terms provide. By failing to negotiate when you had leverage, you've ensured you'll accept unfavorable terms if the marriage ends. But the practical benefits of prenuptial agreements extend beyond just protecting yourself if the marriage fails. The process of negotiating a prenuptial agreement forces conversations about finances, assets, expectations, and values that couples should have before marriage anyway. If you can't have these conversations and reach agreement, that's valuable information that you're not ready for marriage, regardless of how you feel romantically. The couple who can openly discuss finances, negotiate fairly about asset protection and division, and reach agreement that both parties consider reasonable has demonstrated compatibility and communication ability that predicts marital success. The couple who can't have these conversations without conflict has demonstrated incompatibility that predicts marital failure. Additionally, prenuptial agreements can structure marriage in ways that align incentives better than default marriage terms. You can include provisions about financial obligations, property management during marriage, and expectations about contributions that create clarity and prevent conflicts that destroy marriages. For example, if one partner is sacrificing career to support the other's career advancement or to manage household and children, the prenuptial agreement can compensate for this sacrifice through property arrangements or spousal support provisions that ensure the sacrificing partner isn't left impoverished if the marriage ends. This protection makes the sacrifice safer, which paradoxically makes the couple more likely to make arrangements that benefit both parties. Or, if both partners are bringing significant assets into marriage, the prenuptial agreement can protect those assets while clearly defining what's shared versus individual property. This clarity prevents conflicts about money that might otherwise destroy the relationship. The argument against prenuptial agreements that they're unromantic misunderstands both romance and protection. Real romance is building a life together from foundation of mutual respect and practical planning. Real protection is ensuring both parties are treated fairly, regardless of how the relationship evolves. Prenuptial agreements serve both romance and protection by forcing the clarity and fairness that allow relationships to flourish. The person who refuses prenuptial agreements is either financially naive or actively planning to benefit from default marriage terms at their partner's expense. Neither is someone you should marry without protection. The financially naive partner will make other financial mistakes that endanger your joint finances. The partner who wants access to your assets without a prenuptial protection is essentially announcing their intention to profit from divorce if circumstances make that beneficial to them. Machiavelli observed that princes who entered alliances without clearly negotiated terms often found themselves betrayed when terms were disputed. The same applies to marriage. The couple who enters marriage without clearly negotiated terms through prenuptial agreement is gambling that they'll never need those terms clarified, which is gambling with potentially devastating financial consequences. Strategic marriage treats prenuptial agreements as standard practice, not as signs of distrust or lack of commitment. Just as you would never start a business partnership without a partnership agreement clearly defining terms, obligations, and dissolution procedures, you should never enter marriage without a prenuptial agreement clearly defining financial terms and protecting both parties' interests. Machiavelli's warning about marrying for love ultimately comes down to a simple observation that our romantic culture systematically denies: that temporary feelings make terrible foundations for permanent commitments, that impaired judgment makes terrible context for major life decisions, and that strategic evaluation of practical compatibility serves both parties far better than romantic passion ever can. This isn't a call to eliminate love from marriage. It's a call to understand love's proper role as one factor among many, rather than the only factor that matters. The marriage built on practical compatibility that happens to also involve romantic feeling has everything. The marriage built primarily on romantic feeling has nothing once that feeling inevitably fades. The historical approach to marriage as strategic alliance produced more stable partnerships, better financial outcomes, stronger family structures, and often more satisfying relationships than our modern love-first approach has achieved. This isn't because historical people were wiser or better. It's because they evaluated compatibility across dimensions that actually predict marital success, rather than using temporary feelings as the primary criterion. Modern people can apply these same principles by treating marriage as what it fundamentally is: a legal and financial partnership that requires compatibility across financial values, life goals, core values, lifestyle preferences, communication styles, and intellectual connection. Romantic feeling can be the final factor that determines whether you marry a highly compatible potential partner, but it should never be the primary factor that justifies marrying someone without evaluating whether they're actually compatible with you. This approach feels mercenary to people raised on romantic ideology, but practical observation shows it produces better outcomes across every meaningful dimension. Better financial outcomes because you married someone with compatible financial values and goals. Better relationship satisfaction because you avoided predictable incompatibilities. Better life outcomes because you partnered with someone whose life goals aligned with yours rather than conflicted. The person who takes Machiavelli's warning seriously evaluates potential marriage partners strategically rather than just romantically. They refuse to marry for love alone. They insist on demonstrated compatibility across multiple dimensions before considering commitment. They negotiate prenuptial agreements to protect both parties. They treat marriage as the serious strategic decision it actually is. The person who ignores Machiavelli's warning and marries for love alone is making one of the most expensive mistakes possible. Not just financially, though the financial damage is often severe, but emotionally, practically, and in terms of life trajectory. They're gambling their future on temporary feelings, impaired judgment, and optimism that love will somehow overcome incompatibilities that can be identified and avoided before commitment. Machiavelli documented this pattern 5 centuries ago. Modern divorce statistics confirm it continues today. The only question is whether you'll learn from observation and history, or whether you'll insist on learning through personal experience at enormous cost. The princes who married strategically built lasting dynasties. The princes who married for love lost kingdoms. In your life, the same pattern operates. Strategic marriage builds lasting partnership and prosperity. Love marriage gambles everything on feelings that inevitably fade, leaving you trapped in arrangements that no longer serve you or committed to people with whom you're fundamentally incompatible. Choose wisely. Your future depends on it.